엄마 아빠가 보고 있는 걸 보는 건 너무 힘들더라고요.
On Friday, 16 people were killed and 11 injured after the ventilation grate they were standing on collapsed under their weight.
Things that I'm going to be talking about in this video would be highly associated to the reason why I was so happy that I got eliminated in that show.
"21 K-pop moments, 7 levels. This is the iceberg of K-pop moments you should watch with caution. We'll begin with the easier entries, but as we descend, the stories behind these moments become increasingly disturbing. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Disclaimer. Level 1. BTS's J-Hope inappropriately touched by multiple fans during concert. J-Hope's tour stop in Saitama last April 2025 didn't go the way anyone expected, and not for the reasons anyone would hope. People packed the arena for Hope on stage, waiting for electrifying up-close moments with one of the most beloved idols in music. So when J-Hope walked the barricades to greet fans, it was supposed to be a chance for connection, but what actually happened made thousands online uncomfortable almost instantly. One fan lunged for a hug, wrapping her arms around him before there was any indication he wanted it, and J-Hope had to keep performing as if everything was normal. It didn't stop there. Her hands reached out for his stomach, rubbing him like he was some kind of prop, not a person deserving of boundaries. Some argue that these are just frenzied displays of excitement, but standing in J-Hope's position, things are different. Even those who see him as endlessly approachable thought it crossed a line, condemning what happened and saying fans should never put their own feelings ahead of basic respect. Online, outrage snowballed, with BTS fans demanding changes and pointing out that consent and privacy matter regardless of who's on stage. If the situation had been reversed, would this even be debated? Fans and commentators drew comparisons to legal actions in previous events and warned about what could happen if these moments go unchecked. The worst Stray Kids tour. Disaster struck swiftly at the Stray Kids Dominate World Tour stop in Washington, D.C. on June 23, 2025, as temperatures climbed to 99 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 37 to 38 Celsius, and the stadium offered hardly any airflow. Fans in the pit started collapsing as the temperature inside became stifling, with bodies pressed together, sweat everywhere, and not a hint of a breeze. The lack of shade left people exposed for hours, with some reporting heat indexes well into the danger zone. Security forced everyone to dump out any drinks before entry, leaving thousands stuck with only expensive venue water, if any was available at all.
Maybe it's a barricade, but at what cost? It's hot as hell.
Inside, desperate for relief, the group and their crew began handing water bottles down into the crowd, sometimes managing to reach fainting fans, but mostly just watching helplessly as disorder grew. Reports circulated of bottles costing up to $8 a pop, but even then, there often just wasn't enough to go around. Staff looked lost as attendees banged on empty coolers and begged for more water. Fan accounts describe people dragging limp friends to the edge of the crowd while others fanned unconscious bodies with flimsy banners. Midway through the set, the band interrupted the show. Bang Chan would be seen waving for help when he spotted people collapsing. Other members left the stage to push water into the pit. The stadium staff scrambled with no apparent protocol for a mass medical emergency. At one point, the show was paused, but the heat kept climbing and confusion descended over the crowd. The eventual decision to call the show off came abruptly.
모두의 안전을 가장 우선시하기 때문에 그래서 무리하게.
There was no explanation at first, just the lights going up and a voice on the speaker telling 41,000 exhausted people to leave all at once. Music Camp Incident. The live broadcast that forever changed Korean television occurred on July 30th, 2005 during a routine segment called Is This Song Good on MBC's Music Camp. Indie bands were being given rare mainstream exposure that afternoon, with members of RUX, Couch, and Spiky Brats among the invited guests. Mid-performance, Shin Hyun Bum from Couch and Oh Chang-rae from Spiky Brats stunned everyone by dropping their pants in front of the cameras, exposing themselves to thousands watching live broadcast across Korea. What hit people so hard wasn't only the act itself, but the sheer unexpectedness. The cameras caught about 6 seconds before hastily turning away, yet the images had already been captured live, cementing the moment in viewers' minds. MCs Mong and Shinji, thrown into the deep end by what was happening beside them, had no choice but to apologize live on air with serious faces.
오늘 생방송 중에 불미스러운 사고가 생긴 점 저희가 머리 숙여 사과드리고요. 다시는 이런 사고가 일어나지 않게 저희가 주의를 하도록 하겠습니다. 진심으로 다시 한번.
Behind the scenes, producers pulled both bands from the stage while police raced to the venue. 2 performers were investigated for substance use, but tests proved negative, which almost made the proceedings more jarring for the public. It was sober and deliberate, not some drunken mistake. Korea's daily news cycles seized on the story, and it wasn't long before some viewers began speculating whether the pair weren't even Korean, convinced that no local musician would do something so outrageous. Within hours, MBC had logged more than 10,000 complaints. An emergency meeting brought heavy decisions: the permanent cancellation of music camp, the immediate firing or reassignment of show staff, and ultimately the launch of Show Music Corps as its safer, censored replacement. In response to the outcry, NBC also announced a ban on indie bands performing on the network, a policy that lasted until 2009, making it clear just how deeply the incident had disrupted not only live programming, but the identity of Korean music on TV. Legal fallout followed. Both Shin and Oh spent months in holding cells before being sentenced to 2 years probation for public and obstruction of business. Both Couch and Spiky Brats, once promising acts in the indie circuit, disbanded in the aftermath. Level 2. K-pop group wears Nazi-like uniforms. Pritz's performance at a horse racing track in November 2014 spiraled into a public relations disaster overnight.
Hi! I'm Yuna. I'm Shua. I'm Ari. I'm Hana. And we are Freeze!
The 4 members stood on stage in black outfits with red armbands displaying a white circle and a black X right in the middle. The look drew immediate attention for its striking resemblance to Nazi military regalia. That color scheme and prominent arm design triggered instant unease among onlookers and social media users. Critics weren't just local fans. The imagery sparked articles across Korean outlets and even overseas, with the Wall Street Journal reporting on the scandal and sparking international debate. As pictures flew around X, people started connecting dots. How could anyone creating stage costumes ignore the legacy behind black uniforms and red armbands, a historical visual that's burned into global consciousness? Pandagram, the group's agency, responded by denying everything. Their official statement claimed the armbands were inspired by road signs meant to symbolize ambition and limitless growth, not hate or fascism. According to Pandagram, it was all a massive misunderstanding, and there wasn't any intent behind the design except hope for the group's future. They labeled the backlash as a miscommunication, apologizing only for causing distress, but insisted they had no plans to alter the logo or costumes. To them, making changes would have meant admitting that the costumes were controversial, which they flatly rejected. There is another curious layer to this: the name Pritz itself. To an American ear, Pritz isn't far off from Fritz, a World War II era nickname for German soldiers, often used by Allied troops. Whether the choice was coincidence or cluelessness, for viewers already unsettled by the group's bold red armbands, that detail was just one more reason to squirm. Jin of BTS molested at free hug event. BTS member Jin staged a free hugs event in Seoul, welcoming 1,000 fans to celebrate his military discharge on June 13, 2024. The atmosphere was supposed to be upbeat, designed to reconnect Jin with supporters through the simple act of a hug. A gesture that came with explicit boundaries and was never meant to become anything else. But as Jin worked through the line, a woman leaned in and kissed him on the cheek. She did this while Jin was still in motion, visibly flinching in the moment and turning away with a startled look. Video spread online almost immediately, showing not just his discomfort, but his swift attempt to reorient himself, demonstrating how unwanted the situation was. This instantly ignited outrage with BTS's ARMY fandom, as people perceived what happened not as an innocent gesture from a fan, but as a clear violation of Jin. Social media posts and online threads exploded, inspecting how Jin's body language expressed confusion and unease.
안녕하세요 여러분, 되게 오랜만이네요. 제가 이 이벤트를 되게 오래전부터 구상을 했었는데 할 수 있게 되어서 너무 즐겁고.
On the same day, South Korea's national petition system was flooded with calls for action and to look into this incident seriously. Fans urged authorities to investigate. Police moved quickly, summoning the suspect for questioning under local laws related to harassment. The violation was so public and so clearly captured that it warranted immediate investigation, whether it involved a celebrity or not. The woman, later identified as Japanese and in her 50s, reportedly wrote in a personal blog afterward, "My lips touched his neck, his skin was very soft," which only further fueled the backlash and sense of intrusion felt by supporters and the general public. Also, as someone who used to do stage performance with audience interaction, I've been on the receiving end of unwanted physical advances. And let me tell you, it genuinely sucks. So please, no matter how silly or fun you might think it is, performers don't want you molesting them. Stop it. Kang Sung-hoon from Sex Guy's gun prank. The Kang Sung-hoon gun prank stands out as one of the harshest moments ever captured on an early K-pop variety show. On set, Kang Sung-hoon, a member of Sex Guys, was handed a gun and led to believe, through orchestrated chaos, that he had fatally wounded a fellow bandmate, Yoon Ji-won. The immediate aftermath is difficult to watch. Confusion snaps instantly into a full emotional roller coaster. What starts as a staged accident morphs into something much harder for viewers to digest, as Sung-hoon stares at his unresponsive friend, fear etched on his face. He was obviously not acting. The production setup escalates quickly. He's hesitant, then desperate, eventually rushing to carry his bandmate to an ambulance and pleading with on-site staff for help. Shouts for medics and panicked apologies intermingle as Sung-hoon breaks down on camera, barely able to speak, convinced that a real disaster had just played out in front of him. At no point does anyone intervene. The cameras keep rolling, capturing Sung-hoon's visible collapse as guilt and terror take over, as he continues to agonize for minutes before he's told the truth. The pranksters toy directly with Sung-hoon's conscience, forcing a visceral reaction, his hands shaking as he tries to process the supposed catastrophe. There's little laughter once the truth is out. Sung-hoon is left to muster composure on camera, surrounded by colleagues who just participated in a psychological endurance test, not a lighthearted variety segment.
왜 이렇게 리얼하게 했니? 제가 참아야 되는데 고개는 돌리지도 못하고.
Looking back, it's widely cited as a case of entertainment gone too far and an experiment in how much harm is acceptable in pursuit of ratings. Thankfully, you won't find any experiments here, just pure compilations of videos you'll like if you hit that subscribe button. Level 3. 2024 Hunteo Music Awards disaster. Complete chaos erupted as soon as the doors opened and fans flocked to the stage of the 31st Hunteo Music Awards. Security and the artists themselves struggled to keep up with the rush, which took place in Seoul in February 2024, as organizers appeared completely unprepared for the sheer number of attendees. What was supposed to be an exciting evening quickly snowballed into confusion, with standing room crowds swelling out of control. The lack of fixed seats forced hundreds of fans to squeeze closer to the stage than ever before. Multiple X users posted frantic updates about the scene in real time, including reports that someone in the pit was forced, out of sheer desperation, to relieve themselves on the spot.
지금 관객석 이쪽 앞쪽에가 유난히 지금 밀집돼 있어서 관객분들이 힘들어하시는데 저희가 받은 것 같고요. 그래서 멤버들에게
This was not just a rumor. One attendee described it plainly. While packed shoulder to shoulder, someone did a number 2 in the middle of the crowd. Once the smell spread through the pits, surrounding fans desperately tried to push away from the area, only to find themselves boxed in on all sides. Several K-pop idols on stage could clearly see the turmoil and looked visibly disturbed, some caught covering their noses and mouths as the situation got out of control. Soon, staff reportedly had to step in, attempting to contain the crowd and shield the area where the incident occurred. Bizarrely, security confirmed the presence of feces but declined to clean it up, leaving the mess as the night dragged on. Despite obvious discomfort among fans and stars alike, the show didn't pause at all, as organizers signaled for everyone to keep going as if nothing had happened. And while I doubt many people will remember who the number 1 performer at that award show was, I'm certain they'll remember the number 2. Disgusting male staff of girl group fanatics. During a V-Live broadcast on September 7th, 2020, rookie K-pop group Fanatics drew attention for all the wrong reasons. While some members tried to casually hide their legs with jackets, a male staff member's outburst cut through the broadcast. "Why are you covering their legs? We're trying to show them." The moment was tense, the tone blunter than anyone anticipated for a live event. Almost immediately, a sound was heard. 2 sharp, abrupt noises widely identified as slaps, leaving the on-screen idols visibly rattled. Their body language shifted and glances flicked around the room. Reports quickly circulated that the person who placed the jackets, allegedly a female staff member, became the target of the man's scolding and was the one actually struck, all because she tried to show some regard for the girl's comfort. The camera didn't show what happened behind the scenes, but the resulting tension was obvious. The group tried to push forward, faces introducing awkward smiles, hands fidgeting, and the original point of the broadcast getting blurred by what just happened on air. Fent Entertainment, the group's agency, issued a formal apology the following day. The company called the comments inappropriate, recognized the damage, and promised action, noting bluntly that the exchange had no proper excuse. The Girls Debut Showcase. A South Korean group called the Girls launched in 2010 with the concept that wasn't just provocative by K-pop standards, it was considered outright transgressive. Their debut wasn't in a conventional broadcast studio or music program, which is an industry standard for new groups. Instead, they booked a club venue in Gyeonggi-do. The stage was set with blaring cameras waiting, anticipation swirling with the knowledge that this wasn't going to be a typical showcase. Once the trio appeared, it quickly became clear why the event would become an infamous moment in K-pop history. The 3 performers began in lingerie, dancing and singing in front of a crowd that included reporters and photographers, but this was only the start. As the choreography progressed, the performers gradually removed more clothing, pushing the audience into stunned silence. There came a point when, according to every first-hand account, the trio crossed the final line and were left fully exposed, standing before a room full of cameras. They were not moving and not continuing the routine, but were simply visible in a way no one expected of any musical group, let alone a newly debuted girl group in Korea. The entire show had been framed more like a cabaret than a pop music debut. No coyness, no playful dancing around the edge of decency. This was blunt, literal, and, to many, deeply disturbing in its intention. The fallout was immediate. The group was banned from all major music shows, the media clamor was overwhelmingly negative, and public reaction included charges that they were degrading the quality of K-pop and corrupting social norms. Level 4. Sia Girl Group Live Music Show Incident, 2006. The Sia incident in 2006 left viewers in pure disbelief. During a live stage on SBS Inkigayo, Sia and their crew were mid-performance when a backup dancer abruptly collapsed mid-choreography and began convulsing. With cameras broadcasting everything, what followed became infamous. For nearly 30 seconds, the show simply continued. The music didn't stop and the main performers kept to their formations as audience panic started to trickle in. Some of the crowd screamed, but on stage, no one immediately moved to help. Another dancer glanced at the fallen girl, unsure, but nobody intervened. The disturbing part was how everyone on stage seemed paralyzed by the unwritten rule that says the performance must go on no matter what. Viewers watched as a young woman jolted on stage, the flashing lights still strobing, and nothing happened for what must have felt like forever. What they did next only escalated the uproar. She was grabbed and dragged by the legs off stage, limp and unconscious, as if her pain was just another set change. No announcement broke the mood and no explanation came, just an abrupt return to the polished performance. Outrage followed almost instantly online. Clips spread showing the disconnect between the chaos on stage and the refusal to acknowledge what happened. K-pop forums exploded with questions about why neither Sia nor the production team stopped the show. People criticized how cold and robotic the whole response appeared. The official statement that followed blamed panic, saying Sia couldn't respond properly because they were rookies, blinded by lights and pressure. But spectators saw at least one member notice and do nothing. The dancer's diagnosis eventually came out: convulsions due to anemia, along with news that she recovered after hospital care. But the broadcast left an imprint. Those 30 seconds revealed a disturbing reality where image mattered more than urgent care, all to keep the music going. Starlight Boys, the brutal theme song challenge. 68 trainees all standing waiting for that thumping track to cue up again. Episode 2 of Starlight Boys wanted spectacle, but it got something else. Viewers quickly latched on to what was happening. The infamous theme song challenge, which didn't only ask trainees to perform at their peak, it locked them into a cycle of nearly non-stop dancing.
시그널송이 플레이되면 연습생들은 모두 동시에 퍼포먼스를 시작하고 마지막 합격자가 결정될 때까지 시그널송은 무한 재생됩니다.
It lasted up to 19 cycles, short 30-second pauses barely enough to catch your breath. Each pass meant a few could collapse off the stage or otherwise keep going. The song itself wasn't long, but exhaustion showed everywhere. Some had to lean on each other, some sat down clutching their sides, legs shaking, breaths heavy but not enough. The crew's idea was to test limits, but the methods put every trainee on edge. As rounds ticked on, faces drained. One contestant, Sung Ying-hao, couldn't keep quiet as boys dropped to the floor or hunched over, panting. He finally stepped in front of the staff, his voice sharp. "We are human beings, not machines." For a second, it almost broke the spell and others started shouting for the challenge to stop. But all the mentors did was respond with platitudes about dedication and idol life, telling them this was just the price of stardom. It did not end there.
我知道节目组很想展现我们的决心跟毅力，然后也想看到我们坚持的精神。我们是人，我们不是机器。
The crowd watching started pushing back. Social media was filled with despair and fury, clips of collapsing contestants spreading everywhere. Most disturbingly, the camera lingers on boys who can't breathe and others propped up by friends, every second caught and replayed. The challenge had gone way past entertainment.
아이돌들 다 콘서트 하면 많으면 30곡 팬들 앞에서 공연을 한단 말이에요. 관객이 가수의 절박한 퍼포먼스를 보고 권리를 빼앗는 거예요. 이게 힘들다 그러면.
By the end, the initial online shock turned to rage, with thousands calling it dangerously inhumane. Previous survival shows were tough, but this was downright dangerous. Level 5. Red Velvet's Wendy, serious accident. It was early morning during rehearsals for the 2019 SBS Gayo Dejon, and Red Velvet's Wendy couldn't see the edge of the stage. The moment should have been routine: cross the tunnel and descend the stairs. Except the stairs weren't there. The tunnel, a cramped second-floor passage, was shrouded in darkness with no visible tape or markers. The lighting was so poor that even basic safety lines were missing. So as Wendy stepped forward, she plummeted more than 2 meters straight down. No warning and nothing to break her fall, just open air and a hard stage floor. The impact itself was devastating. Wendy fractured her pelvis and wrist and suffered trauma to her face, including cheekbone fractures. Bruises formed across her body, but the worst part was the swelling. Her injuries were so swollen, doctors couldn't assess their full extent at first. All they could do was stabilize her, wait, and hope nothing worse was hiding under the initial trauma. Almost immediately after news of the accident spread, chaos erupted among performers backstage. Others were set to use the same stage tunnel that day, and the sense of dread was palpable. Anxiety coursed through the green room. Some staff admitted that the entire disaster could have been avoided. Instead, everyone was left to question how such basic safety could be overlooked at a major broadcast event. Extreme prank gone wrong. Simon, before ever stepping on stage to debut with DMTN, found himself at the mercy of a Korean TV show called Humiliating Flower Boys. It was a program built on the idea that good looks are a ticket for public ridicule. The whole show revolved around trapping so-called flower boys, handsome young men, in meticulously planned emotional stress tests, all in the name of entertainment. Its format invited a female audience to rank male guests openly on appearance, then judge them again after watching them endure elaborate pranks. It was never about wit and always about how much embarrassment they could stomach. In Simon's case, the ordeal wasn't playful or cheeky. It stretched over 2 relentless hours where reality and entertainment blurred, making it hard to tell if this was still a prank or a genuine threat. Producers convinced Simon he was meeting influential music insiders, only for the scenario to nosedive once he got in the car. Suddenly, he was blindfolded, hands tied with rope and tape, and cut off from everything familiar for the next 2 hours as the car wound its way to a remote location. All the while, voices in the car hurled criticisms, thinly veiled threats, and comments meant to rattle his self-confidence further. Once inside, Simon remained blindfolded, adrenaline likely coursing as strangers physically restrained and handled him roughly, keeping control over him at every step. The most jarring moment was when a woman entered pretending to be a deranged fan, or a seseng fan as they call it there. She invaded his space, making inappropriate advances, groping him, and making him repeat how much he loves her, until finally forcing a kiss, direct and unequivocal, in front of everyone in the room. But the torment wasn't finished. The woman leaves and returns, this time brandishing a fake weapon, ramping up the fear even further. Simon pleads to call his mother, thinking he might not make it out. Only then does the crew reveal the setup. It was all a hidden camera stunt, the ultimate punchline at his expense. Some fans say this is the worst hidden camera prank ever, with some commenting, "If this happened to me, I would have sued them." Lee Bon kidnapped by a fan. First-generation idol Lee Bon recounted a chilling episode on Kim Soo-mi's Did You Eat?, describing how a routine evening during the mid-1990s became a nightmare with no warning. Filming it ended during a cold night, and her manager headed to warm up the car while she finished the last shots. Lee Bon walked alone down a stairway toward the waiting vehicle, but before she reached it, everything went dark. She fainted, stripped of awareness in an instant. When she came to, Lee Bon found herself in a total stranger's house. She overheard voices from behind the door discussing her presence and seemed to sense conflict about the situation. Dazed and alarmed, she gathered the courage to step out and confront her kidnappers. The truth was disturbingly simple. The man had taken her for his younger brother who idolized her. He admitted he had gone too far, overtaken by obsession. There was no attempt to justify or rationalize, just a bare confession that her fame put her in this unnerving predicament. Libon decided the safest move was to stay calm, engage with the fan, and rely on her composure for any chance of returning home safely, spending the day as requested. She asked them to show her around their neighborhood, buying time. There was no violence and no threats. The horror lay in the loss of control and the unpredictable intentions of strangers who idolized her from afar. It was an enforced hospitality masking the reality that she was being held against her will. It was kidnapping with a smile. Eventually, the brothers released Libon and she returned home shaken but unharmed. The boundary between fan and idol, already stretched thin, disappeared entirely. The next day, a luxury yellow sports car appeared at her home, intended as a proposal from the kidnapper. A gesture meant to impress, sent in the wake of an abduction, only deepened the disturbing undertones. Libon refused repeatedly, but the fan continued until rebuffed for good. Level 6. Idol School. Poor filming conditions and effect on health. Trainees on Idol School, some as young as 12 years old, spent months living cramped in stuffy rooms, battling paint fumes and dust that irritated their skin and left them feeling constantly drained. Lee Hae-in later revealed in her interview with MBC's PD Note that food was so strictly rationed, contestants were often left hungry. The simple act of eating had been turned into a covert struggle for survival. Hiding cookies and snack bars in her underwear was a daily necessity. Management monitored their weight obsessively, and anything above strict targets meant punishment. Jessica Lee, who appeared on Idol School as Lee Shul, recalled being allowed just a single fry or a piece of meat at mealtime. What makes this even more disturbing is how the show's rules left them cut off from the outside world. Phones were confiscated for months, contact with families was limited, and necessities like shampoo or clothes could only be bought once a month.
출연자들은 촬영 기간 동안 휴대전화를 압수당한 채 외부와 단절된 생활을 했다는데요.
Lee Hae-in's description of the effects of this regime stick with you, like her periods stopping for months at a time. Some reported periods of bloody discharge, which is a clear sign of the hormonal chaos caused by full-scale physical and emotional exhaustion. Jessica Lee later said she begged to be eliminated. The experience left her shaken, realizing quickly that the entire setup was built more on performance for TV than any real concern for the people involved.
Things that I'm going to be talking about in this video would be highly associated to the reason why I was so happy that I got eliminated in that show.
She mentions the indignity of body checks after they caught her smuggling food, managers searching through their clothes to root out hidden snacks. Even now, Jessica credits Lee Hae-in's willingness to speak out for finally exposing a system that forced people still in school into such extreme situations, making viewers wonder what goes unseen behind kids' route to debut. Worst Saesang cases. Some of the worst Saesang incidents in K-pop sound almost unreal, yet they're proof of how far some obsessive individuals will go, pushing through every limit of privacy or reason. Back in 2006, Yoonho from TVXQ was handed a bottle of orange juice by someone who passed as staff.
윤호 씨는 대기실로 돌아와 음료수를 마신 직후 구토 증세를 보였습니다. 윤호 씨는 곧바로 인근 병원으로 옮겨져 치료를 받고 있으며 다행히 생명에는 지장이 없는 것으로 알려졌습니다.
He only realized something was wrong after drinking it and feeling sick. It secretly had super glue mixed in, a twisted attempt that could have caused major internal harm. The culprit later turned out to be a self-identified fan who snuck onto the set, left no trace, and watched as medics rushed Yoonho to the hospital for immediate treatment. If that already sounds off the rails, look at what landed on Taekyon's, 2 p.m., doorstep, a handwritten note. in menstrual blood sent in 2009. The bodily fluids were just part of the problem, with the sender spelling things out in the most graphic way. It was intended to shock and to unsettle, making sure the recipient would never forget about it.
The fan even wrote a note to Taekyeon that said, "I dedicate to Taekyeon my period blood. Look, Taekyeon, you cannot live without me." Obviously, this letter gained a lot of negative attention online.
For some idols, it isn't just one encounter, but years of being followed, watched, and threatened. Kim Chae-chung, ex-TVXQ JYJ, endured over a decade of dealing with people who wouldn't stay away. Fans broke into his home, left proof of having invaded his personal space, and even sent him photographs taken from inside his own house. He once woke up to find someone actually in his bed, not just in his apartment. That's the level these so-called fans operate on, stripping idols of basic comfort and privacy. Even newer acts like EXO have barely dodged potentially dangerous scenarios. One day after a scheduled event, EXO's members walked out toward a van that looked exactly like their management's regular ride. The only thing that stopped them from stepping in was a manager double-checking just long enough to realize the vehicle was a decoy planted by Saesang's as a kidnapping attempt waiting to happen. In seconds, it could have meant the entire group disappearing without a trace. Under 15. Debuting underage contestants. MBN's Under 15 left audiences shocked before it even aired by recruiting girls as young as 3 to compete for a spot in a K-pop group. When teasers dropped, they made immediate waves. Girls barely out of kindergarten decked out in outfits and makeup that was so adult that commentators could barely believe what they were seeing. Images spread fast, with age captions like 8 or 11 visible next to contestants performing suggestive dance routines for cameras. Backlash exploded immediately. Critics called out the show for exploiting children's innocence to help them go viral. Teachers' unions and child advocacy groups condemned it, highlighting how dangerous it is to parade such young children in this way, especially in an industry notorious for harsh pressures and invasive media attention. Korean viewers and international K-pop fans were nearly unanimous in their outrage. Comments pointed out how these children should be in school, not lining up to be picked apart by judges and the public for their looks and maturity. Others noted the clear commercial angle as industry insiders pushed for ever younger idols to debut. Even attempts to defend the show seemed hollow, producers insisting the guardians consented and that precautions were in place. But the fact remained, no level of supervision could erase the discomfort felt by viewers at seeing children perform for approval in such staged grown-up roles. Things only got worse as more details emerged. 59 contestants from 70 countries, some so young they could barely read their own cue cards. The competition's very concept revolved around evaluating these children for their appearance, stamina, and idol material. The show was immediately called exploitative and degrading, inviting exactly the sort of attention that no responsible adult would want directed toward such vulnerable participants. The fury forced MBN and its parent studio to cancel Under 15 just days before its scheduled launch. And nothing of value was lost. Level 7. The Burning Sun Scandal. The Burning Sun scandal shattered K-pop's glamorous image practically overnight. It started with the notorious Gangnam nightclub co-owned by Seungri of Big Bang, which was soon exposed as a front for orchestrated criminal activity sweeping far beyond the music industry. When first-hand accounts surfaced, stories poured out about women being targeted in club rooms, secretly dosed before being filmed and humiliated, often without any means to defend themselves. Staff, higher-ups, and guests participated in a network for distributing illicit substances and arranging for escorts, turning club nights into scenes of organized exploitation, all running right under the noses of law enforcement. Investigations revealed that club managers frequently bought off police officers to conceal their wrongdoings, and victims who attempted to report these crimes were ignored, ridiculed, and occasionally intimidated. Threats and reprisals were directed at public figures who dared to speak out.
바닥으로 내려와서 무릎 꿇고 빌었어요. 집에 가겠다고 하니까 사진을 찍으면 보내주겠대요. 웃으라고 하는데 웃음이 안 나오고 얼굴을 가리고 싶잖아요.
In leaked group chat messages dating back to 2015, Seungri was seen explicitly arranging women for foreign investors, coordinating rooms, payments, and the keeping quiet relationship with complicit officers. Illicit videos and photographs were traded in private chat groups, linked to multiple stars, with each message becoming evident of a world built on exploiting trust and status. As police raided venues and poured through those chat records, the pattern kept repeating. Substances for control, escorts for profit, and well-connected police silencing whistleblowers. They even discussed sending Korean women overseas as part of the operation. Tax evasion and embezzlement added corporate-level corruption to the mix, suggesting roots deeper than anyone imagined. Seungri himself not only denied direct involvement, but seemed completely blind to the growing evidence until public outrage forced his retirement from Big Bang.
성매매 알선 혐의 조사 중에 인정하셨습니까?
이 점을 참고하여 주시기 부탁드리고 새롭게 제기된 의혹에 대해서는 입장을 정리해서 조만간 말씀드리도록 하겠습니다.
The fallout reached far beyond one club. Stars such as Jung Jun-young and Choi Jung-hoon were sentenced for sharing illegal recordings and other serious crimes, while several police were disciplined, though few high-ranking officials faced actual jail time. As each detail became public, celebrity reputations collapsed, and ordinary people suddenly questioned how widespread such privileged protection really was.
The court sentences Jung to 6 years for the gang in Daegu. Chair is sentenced to 2.5 years for his part in the Daegu gang. Seung Lee is convicted of obtaining for investors. He was sentenced to 18 months on appeal.
In the end, Seungri received prison time for organizing escort services, embezzlement, gambling overseas, and sharing illicit media, making a rare moment when a K-pop icon faced real consequences for orchestrating a web of harm behind closed doors. Most tragic concert in K-pop history.
On Friday, 16 people were killed and 11 injured after the ventilation grate they were standing on collapsed under their weight. They were clustered there to catch a glimpse of an outdoor K-pop concert at the first Pangyo Techno Valley Festival in Gyeonggi-do Province.
On October 17th, 2014, over 700 fans poured into Seongnam's Pangyo Tech Valley for a K-pop festival with all eyes on 4 minutes performance. Eager for a better view, approximately 30 concertgoers stepped onto a steel ventilation grate suspended above a concrete shaft, probably thinking nothing of it, until the surface suddenly collapsed beneath their feet. In seconds, those fans plummeted over 10 meters, straight into an underground parking area. The impact was immediate and catastrophic, with 16 killed and 11 severely injured. Eyewitnesses recall how the music didn't even stop at first. The performers continued, not realizing what had occurred just behind them. The ventilation grate simply couldn't bear the weight. Its collapse throwing bodies through steel and concrete with terrifying force. Photos from the scene revealed a huge gap surrounded by scraps of broken metal just a few feet from the stage. People had stood there for a better glimpse of their idols, which is a common move in the chaos of unregulated outdoor events. It was supposed to be a celebration, but the lack of careful crowd control, barriers, and safety oversights meant disaster was never far away. Witnesses described seeing people sucked into the hole. Some of them are just commuters who had stopped by after work, drawn in by the vibrant scene, not realizing that this simple decision would be their last. The suicide of An So-jin from Kara Project reality show. The Kara Project incident involving An So-jin is one of those moments that disturbs anyone who hears the full story. For 5 years, So-jin trained, hoping to make it as an idol, fueled by ambition and the urgent belief that she was running out of time. At just 23 years old, she was already feeling the industry's clock ticking. The Kara Project, that peculiar televised competition, was her last shot, as she'd confided more than once. But dreams don't always become reality. The winner was Heo Young-ji, whose addition to Kara was broadcast for every fan to see, while Sojin slipped back into obscurity despite her talents. Sojin placed third, her skills acknowledged, but not enough to beat the system. After losing the competition, she waited for another opportunity, clinging to hope along with other trainees. But in January 2015, DSP Media told her she wouldn't be joining their new group named April, as the contract was terminated. Her work was erased by a single decision: no encore, just silence. Struggling with depression in the aftermath, Sojin's world shrank. Stories surfaced among friends and fans, all hinting at hopelessness. Living at home in Daegu, working odd jobs to survive, and dealing with the sense that she had failed at her own dream. For 5 years, she had endured this system which spotlights trainees for a flash of attention only to discard them if they don't fit. On February 24th, 2005, she was found in the garden of her apartment building. The details are gut-wrenching. No note, just a final, irreversible action. Investigators reported no evidence of foul play. The difficult part is that her contract had been terminated just weeks before, while the other former Baby Kara contestants were still held under DSP's wing. All that time and effort was erased with barely any explanation, while fans were left to sift through rumors, trying to understand how someone so bright could vanish so quickly. If you'd like to see more videos like this one, check out our most disturbing movies, Iceberg.